You won't believe what Elon said to the biker. What he said shocked the entire diner. The sun was cruel that afternoon. It scorched the Texas sky until the horizon wavered like a mirage, and the air carried the kind of heat that clung to skin and turned silence into something heavy. Elon Musk had been driving for hours, alone on a stretch of forgotten highway, the kind lined with rusting fence posts and weather-beaten barns that hadn't seen fresh paint in decades. It wasn't about the destination. It rarely was for him anymore. He didn't want meetings, or cameras, or digital noise. He wanted quiet. He wanted dust, fried eggs, and maybe the kind of coffee that tasted like it had been burning on the pot since dawn. The kind only a diner with a screen door and cracked vinyl booths could serve. He spotted it off the road just as his Cybertruck's battery dipped below 20%. The iron skillet, neon sign flickering, windows streaked with dust. A Coca-Cola clock inside that had probably stopped ticking back when people still carried change in their pockets. Perfect. Elon parked, stepped out, and stretched. He reached behind the passenger seat where a pile of forgotten clothes had lived for months. A wrinkled white shirt sat near the top, soft from too many washes. He pulled it over his head, not thinking twice. He didn't notice the bold red lettering across the front until he caught his reflection in the diner's front window. "Make America Great Again." He paused, blinked, then shrugged. It had been given to him by a retired engineer after a long, spirited conversation at a private innovation summit in Arizona. Elon hadn't even wanted to take it, but the old man had insisted. Said it wasn't about politics, not really. Said it was about pride. About building things. Fixing broken systems. Making stuff work again. Elon didn't argue. He just folded it and tossed it in the truck. Today, it was the first shirt within reach. He pushed through the diner door, a little bell jingling overhead, and stepped into the cool, syrup-scented quiet of mid-afternoon. Inside, it was everything he needed. Faded linoleum floors, a chalkboard menu with the words, "Breakfast served all day," written in shaky handwriting. An old couple in the corner sharing a slice of cherry pie. A trucker dozing in a booth with a half-empty cup of coffee in front of him. The waitress, a tired woman with a ponytail and sneakers that had seen too many doubles, looked up from behind the counter. Her eyes flicked to the shirt first, then to his face. The waffles were perfect. Crispy edges, soft inside, swimming in butter and maple syrup that soaked into every crevice. Elon hadn't said a word since sitting down, and the waitress hadn't pressed him. She moved quietly between tables, but her eyes kept drifting back to him, to that shirt. The buzz in the diner had changed. Conversations were shorter, sentences clipped. A couple near the window paid their bill faster than expected. The air conditioning hummed steadily, but it couldn't cut through the rising tension. Then came the sound. Low, heavy, unmistakable. Engines. 3 of them at first. Then 4. Then 5, 6. The rumble grew louder until it shook the window panes slightly. A flock of black motorcycles pulled into the gravel lot in front of the diner, their riders clad in sun-scorched leather and dust-coated jeans. Chrome glinted like knives under the late-day sun. The waitress froze mid-step. "Trouble?" Elon asked, finally breaking his silence. She didn't answer, just kept staring at the door. Then it swung open with the shriek of tired hinges. They walked in like a force of nature. 6 men, faces carved by sun and road, jackets adorned with patches, some earned, some taken. The tallest of them all, thick arms tatted to the wrist, led the pack. His black vest had a single word across the back. Bull. He was the kind of man who didn't have to yell to own a room. He just had to enter it. The rest followed, boots thudding against old tile, laughter echoing off the walls, loud and raw, the kind that turned heads whether you wanted to look or not. Elon didn't turn. He just took another bite of waffle and watched their reflection in the window. Bull was talking about a busted carburetor, telling a story loud enough for the whole diner to hear. The others chuckled and dropped into seats at the long table near the back, scraping chairs loudly across the floor. No one in the diner spoke. The regulars went quiet. Even the old couple who'd been silently chewing pie now stared into empty plates. Bull's voice dropped suddenly. Then came the words, low and sharp. "Hey, that guy over there." The words weren't meant to be whispered. Elon took another sip of coffee. He knew. They'd seen the shirt. Across the diner, Bull's gaze had landed on the white fabric and the bold red letters that had set off more arguments than some wars. His brow furrowed, not in anger, but in calculation. The other bikers leaned over to look. But instead of marching across the room or throwing a chair or tossing an insult, Bull did something stranger. He grinned. Guess the future's got a sense of humor, he muttered. He didn't move toward Elon. Not yet. Instead, he waved over the waitress. Coffee. And whatever that guy's having, he said, nodding toward Elon's plate. Smells like Sunday morning. The waitress looked startled but obeyed. As she poured the drinks, Bull didn't take his eyes off Elon. Elon finally turned, locked eyes with him for just a moment. It wasn't a stare down. It was something else, something unreadable. Two men who had nothing in common. Yet somehow, in that second, they both knew something was coming. Not a fight, but something deeper. And neither of them had the slightest idea how far this moment was about to reach. For a split second, her expression changed, just a flicker. Not shock, not recognition. Just something like calculation. She didn't say anything about it. Just grabbed a mug and nodded toward a booth by the window. Anywhere you like, she said. Elon slid into the booth, resting his forearms on the chip table. He didn't want to check his phone, so he didn't. Instead, he stared out the window at the endless road he had come from, watching heat shimmer like invisible waves above the asphalt. The mug hit the table with a soft thud. Coffee. Black, hot enough to burn. As he sipped it, he could feel it begin. The eyes. Not many. Just a few. From the corner booth, the old man with a camo hat glanced up, lingered on the shirt a little longer than necessary, then went back to his toast. A woman behind the counter whispered something to a teenage busba, who looked up with wide eyes. Elon could feel the ripple, subtle but unmistakable, pass through the room. He hadn't come here to make a statement. But he had made one anyway. Not with his words. With his shirt. And somewhere between the second sip of coffee and the arrival of his waffles, Elon Musk began to feel the strange tension of a room that had not yet decided how to react to him. It was the kind of energy that hung low before a thunderstorm. Still. Waiting. He looked down at the red letters again. He had no idea that this simple stop, this quiet little diner, was about to become a powder keg, and that this shirt, this unthinking choice, would ignite a moment that the whole town would talk about for weeks to come. The waitress moved like a shadow, her tray trembling ever so slightly as she brought over Bull's coffee and a full plate of waffles, identical to Elon's. She set it down with care, then vanished behind the counter like she was ducking for cover. The bikers were still watching. Bull hadn't spoken again. Not yet. He just sat there, hands folded over the Formica tabletop, staring at Elon with the kind of interest most men reserved for unsolvable puzzles. Elon took the last bite of his waffle and wiped his mouth with a napkin. He didn't look back, not out of defiance, but because he didn't need to. He could feel the room around him like a ripple, tension, weight, anticipation. The quiet before thunder. Finally, after several long minutes, Bull stood. His boots echoed across the diner floor like slow drums, one step at a time. Every eye in the building turned. The cook leaned out from the kitchen, holding a spatula midair. The old man in the corner crossed himself under his breath. Elon didn't flinch. Bull stopped at the edge of Elon's booth. He looked at the shirt again. Red letters. Bright. Unapologetic. He scratched his beard, gave a little chuckle, and said in a voice meant to be heard, "Didn't expect to see that out here." Elon finally met his eyes. "Didn't expect to wear it." Bull raised an eyebrow. "So why did you?" Elon looked down at the letters, as if seeing them for the first time. Then he leaned back in the booth, hands resting on the table, and spoke with a calm that didn't waver. "It was a gift," he said, "from a man who'd worked his whole life on engines, steel, and solving impossible problems. He didn't talk politics. He talked about legacy, about building things that matter, about fixing what's broken, even when the world's too distracted to care." The words hung in the air like dust caught in sunlight. Bull tilted his head slightly. It wasn't the answer he expected. The other bikers had gone quiet. One of them, a younger guy with sunglasses hanging from his collar, glanced around uncomfortably. Another leaned forward as if trying to hear better. "I thought guys like you were all about the future," Bull said, his voice softer now. "Mars, AI, wires and satellites. What's that shirt got to do with any of that?" Elon shrugged. "Everything. Or nothing. Depends on what you think it means." Bull squinted, as if weighing the answer. Then he slid into the opposite side of the booth. The entire diner exhaled like it had been holding its breath. "I'm not gonna lie," Bull said, stirring cream into his coffee without looking down. "When I saw that shirt part of me wanted to kick your chair out from under you. I figured, Elon replied. But then I thought, maybe I ought to ask why instead. And just like that, the moment turned. Not with a bang, but with a question. A question that would become a conversation. A conversation that would change more than just a few minds. Because this wasn't a story about a fight. This was a story about what happens when two people who are supposed to hate each other sit down at the same table. For a long moment, the sound of clinking forks, soft chatter, and buzzing neon gave way to something new, silence thick with curiosity. Elon Musk and Bull sat across from each other like two men from separate worlds, one from the frontier of technology, the other from the forgotten highways of America's spine. And yet the shirt between them, the bold red letters stretched across Elon's chest, was the only thing anyone seemed to see. Bull sipped his coffee, elbow on the table, eyes still fixed on the man in front of him. You know, he began, voice low but steady. My brother wore that same slogan, every day, like it was stitched into his skin. Elon didn't speak. He knew to wait. He died overseas, Bull continued. Did 3 tours in Afghanistan. We buried him with that damn shirt folded in the flag. Across the room, the waitress froze behind the counter, her expression suddenly softening. Bull exhaled sharply through his nose. Thing is, I never even cared about the politics of it. I cared that he believed in something. And he believed in that. He pointed at Elon's chest. He believed in working with your hands, fixing what's broken, and not letting some fancy suit in a city tell you what's worth saving. There was no accusation in his tone now. Just memory. And me? Bull went on, his eyes narrowing. I've spent the last 10 years thinking the whole country's been turning its back on people like us. We get laughed at on the news, called names, painted with one big damn brush. He looked around the diner, at the regulars pretending not to eavesdrop. But then in walks you, Mr. Rocket Man, wearing that shirt like it doesn't mean anything. Elon finally spoke, his voice quiet but anchored. I didn't wear it to provoke anyone. I wore it because it reminds me of a man who believed in action, not arguments. Bull chuckled once, no bitterness in it. And now here we are. 2 people who probably should have never ended up at the same table. Yet we did, Elon said. Bull looked down at his plate of untouched waffles, then back up. You ever wonder, he asked, if maybe the problem isn't the words on the shirt, but the stories we never bother to hear? Elon leaned forward. I wonder that every day. At the counter, a trucker slowly lowered his coffee. The old man in the corner nodded faintly to himself. Even the teenage busboy stopped wiping the table and just stood there, listening. Outside, the sun had dipped low, casting orange shadows through the windows. The room felt different now, not cooler but wider, as if space had opened between the walls for something new to grow. Bull tapped his fork against the plate. I don't care much for tech guys, he said, but you're not what I expected. I rarely am, Elon replied with a faint smile. Bull grinned. You're still weird though. That, Elon said, I fully admit. And then, finally, Bull took a bite of his waffle. He chewed thoughtfully, paused. Damn, you were right. These are good. Laughter broke out at the corner booth. And just like that, something shifted. The sun had begun its descent, casting long shadows across the cracked parking lot of the Iron Skillet. Inside the diner, something remarkable was happening, quietly, almost invisibly. Elon Musk and Bull, 2 men from different galaxies, figuratively and nearly literally, were now talking like old acquaintances. Not about politics, not about billion-dollar companies or biker codes, but about people. About fathers who taught them to fix broken things. About places that no longer exist on maps, only in memory. About what happens to a country when its people stop listening. Across the room, the trucker who had sat in stone silence now reached into his vest and pulled out his phone. He didn't plan it. He didn't even fully understand why. He just knew he had to capture this. Click. 1 photo. Elon Musk in a worn-out white t-shirt with a MAGA logo stretched across the chest, sipping black coffee across from a tattooed biker named Bull, both of them smiling faintly as if they just shared a joke about life and loss. The trucker posted it on social media with a caption so simple it almost felt accidental. Saw something wild today. Elon Musk and a biker named Bull having waffles and talking about what America means. No yelling. No insults. Just respect. We need more of this. He hit post, paid his bill, and left. By the time he got to the next gas station an hour down the road, The photo had 2,000 shares. By sundown, it was trending. By midnight, it had exploded into every corner of the internet. What really happened in that Texas diner? Elon Musk and a biker walk into a waffle joint and walk out as legends. The MAGA shirt moment that started a conversation instead of a fight. Journalists called the diner. Locals posted their own blurry shots from the back of the room. Some praised the civility. Others tried to twist it into something it wasn't. But Elon stayed quiet. And so did Bull. Because they knew something the headlines didn't. It wasn't about the shirt. It was about the choice not to react with fists or fire. It was about the power of sitting down, eye to eye, and asking not, "Whose side are you on?" but, "Why do you feel that way?" A week later, a framed photo hung on the wall of the Iron Skillet, right above the corner booth. Beneath it, in black marker, someone had written, "This is where we stopped shouting. This is where we started listening." And if you drive through Amarillo, Texas, and stop at the diner around sunset, you'll still see that booth, empty most days, but glowing in the orange light, like it's waiting for the next two people bold enough to sit down and just talk.